Viva Aaliyah. Viva Aaliyah. Viva Aaliyah.
Hey Vivas, and welcome to another episode of Viva Aaliyah. You can see I don't have my green screen on today. I wanted to do green makeup. So I said that to Dominic, and he actually sent me a photo back of Alphaba. So thank you, Dominic. I am really excited, also a little nervous about me tonight. I'm very excited about tonight's show though. We are talking about a very important topic to me. I've realized recently that we don't talk about our mental health. And we've had a mental health panel on the show before, and I just want to continue to tell this story. So we're going to continue to do it in multiple ways. Get a little side boob, sorry. We're going to do this in multiple ways on Viva Aaliyah. In season 2, we talked about mental health in the military for LGBTQ people. And today we're doing it with performers and entertainers, people that are near and dear to me, people that have been in my life for a long time and recently and all sorts of stages. But one of the things that I've done recently is I've started posting on my Instagram and my Facebook stories about what's been going on with me and my mental health. First of all, we're in a fucking pandemic, and we are still in a pandemic. All of you senators and whatnots and governors that want to talk about how we shouldn't be wearing masks, we are still in a pandemic. We still need to be responsible. And it has taken a huge toll on a lot of people's mental health. I work in HR during the day, which means I hear lots of mental health stories and mental health issues. And I notice that we don't talk about it. And we don't talk about it because we've been told from a young age not to talk about it, not to put our stories out there, and not to be okay doing that. And so I want to change that narrative. So a few weeks ago, I posted and said, thank you for all of your concern about my mental health status. However, sometimes it's just good to talk about it and get it out there and let you know that we're all going through a rough time. And that's what we're here to do today. So I'm going to bring on all of our entertainers in all of their capacities right now. And while we're bringing them on, I just want to say that each of them are going to tell their stories. Each of them are going to tell us why talking about mental health is important to them. And if you have a story or you relate to anything, go ahead and message in. We're going to talk to you. But Dominic, let's bring them all on. Yes. Ooh, gorgeous. Are we good? Yes. Okay, we're good. Thank you all for being on the show. And thank you all for being ready to tell your stories. I am just going to start off really quick and say that I suffer from anxiety and depression, and I'm on medication for it. And I talk to a therapist twice a week to make sure that I'm okay. And it's hard to... I feel like I say that to people at work or outside, and they're like, oh, girl, you're talking about your therapy sessions. You're talking about the fact that you take medication for this. Are you okay? And I'm like, yes, I'm okay because of these things, because I'm putting it out there, because I'm doing all these things. So I am going to start with my dearest and oldest friend on this call and on this show, Corey. Corey, you and I have known each other since high school. We've probably talked about more things than we would care to admit to. We've probably been through more things than we care to admit to together. You were a part of my life when I came out. You were a part of my life when I made some really stupid decisions after coming out. I just am really grateful for you and for you being on here. We actually just spoke backstage and we said we probably haven't had a full-on in-depth conversation for almost a decade now. And so it's good to reconnect and good to talk about this. But like I said, we're entertainers, and we met because we both studied voice. We were opera majors, singers, learners together. and all of those things. And so I would love for you to talk about you. First, introduce yourself, then talk about your story and why talking about this is important to you.
So, my name is Corey. Nice to meet you all. I have bipolar disorder. I was diagnosed when I was 19, so I was in the middle of the Michigan State University opera program. I was doing really well. Um, One of the photos that I sent is me as Baba the Turk, which was I was 18. That was the first role I got. I got a role as Zerlina the second year, and then everything started to fall apart, and no one had any idea why. One of the things Aaliyah didn't mention is that the professor that we both studied with used to be a social worker in his other life, which was really lucky for everybody studying with him. So he recognized that something was wrong, and we decided that I would drop all of my classes and leave and go to massage school because being an entertainer means having another job. And I decided I didn't want to be a waitress and that massage would be a better choice, at least for me. I was hospitalized during massage school. I almost drove my car into a telephone pole, and not because I wanted to die, but because I was so enraged at the time that I thought it just would be a really great crash. And something in my brain was like, that's not a good thought. That's a that's a really bad thought. So I drove to the emergency room instead. I checked myself in using hand signals. I was nonverbal by that time. I couldn't speak at all. I was so angry. um, I was sent to a mental health place. I woke up high as a kite and happy to be there and just delighted with life while I was in this mental facility. And I told the nice therapist the next day all of the things that made life wonderful. And she was like, I think you have bipolar disorder. And I was like, no, I don't. What are you talking about? And she was like, well, let's look at all the things that you just told me. And I was like, you might have a point. Um, so I started on medication. I am still on medication. I am no longer a performer. The anxiety was just incredibly overwhelming. And I think one of the really important reasons that we should talk about all this is that I didn't have words for what was happening at the time. And my entire family suffers from mental illness. So we do talk about it, but there's still just wasn't any. I had anxiety attacks every time I went into a practice room, which means I didn't go into practice rooms. Um, I my manic phases were more rage based, which is a thing that happens but is really not talked about, so people don't recognize it. Um, I my depressive phases were relatively normal for everyone around me, so why talk about it if it's normal? Um, but I'm here and I'm treated and I'm very careful about my schedule in my life now. And all of that took a lot of practice because I learn things now from research articles instead of people because no one's got words.
And science is important. Science is important. One thing that I do have a question about music and you together. So music for me has always been a release. That's why I get on stage. That's why I sing in drag. That's why I was vocal before. Do you find any sort of like release or any sort of comfort in music for yourself, not in front of other people though?
Yeah, actually, I use both music and film now since live theater is sort of off the table at the moment for me. Um, to so when you have bipolar disorder, your brain likes to lie a lot about a lot of things. It lies about who you are, it lies about how other people feel about you. It just straight lies. And it also lies to you about your emotions. And when I have music or film or whatever it is that I'm experiencing, I know what emotion I'm supposed to be experiencing. And I know that it's not the beginning of an episode. So it's a great way to have emotions without being afraid of them anymore. And that has really helped to stabilize things. So if I'm feeling sad, I can be like, okay, we're going to put the sad thing on. I'm going to experience the sadness, and I'll experience their sadness and my sadness all together. And this is what we're doing right now. And this is on purpose. And this is not out of my control. So, yes, it's helped a lot.
I feel like that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this segment together, because a lot of us have that in common. We turn to our entertainment and our music and really want to, like, we have something that has always drawn us. I mean, I've never felt so connected than when I think when we were in high school together, and when we were, you know, performing together and making those weird shows that we did. And the person that we both studied with that had a past as a social worker. Oh my gosh, there's us at prom.
There it is.
There is us at prom.
Happy prom.
Happy prom. But the individual that we studied with, wow. The individual that we studied with, you were like, we were so lucky. Sometimes I felt so like I think we had this joke between all of us. There was a big group of friends that kind of studied together. And we said, sometimes you would walk in and you would think it was a great day. And he would be like, but what's wrong? And you were like, wait, what?
Nothing's wrong. I'm fine.
And we were like, is something going on with me? I guess it is. And so he would break it down for us, we were very lucky looking back at it now. But when you're a 16, 17-year-old, you're like, wait a second. Are you sure? Is this real? So, but yeah, no, it was definitely eye-opening to have him as somebody we not only studied with, but was a mentor in life and was able to kind of coach us during some of those hard times. And then mental health, just talking about it. I know you kind of like alluded to this, but what is your kind of thought process on how it's been almost beaten into us that we shouldn't talk about it, and what can we do to get over that?
Getting people over stuff is a long process. Don't be afraid to talk about it, and talk about it in a completely normal, casual tone of voice, the same way you talk about your nails or your hair or what you had for breakfast or any of that. Because if you sometimes when you just slide it into the conversation, like, oh yeah, I had this, I'm manic right now. This is what's happening with me. So mania happens for me generally around the equinoxes, which has to do with the light change. So I'll open conversations with, I'm manic right now. So just so you know, I might not hear what you're saying, and you're going to need to you might need to repeat yourself a couple times, but I am trying to listen. I'm just really distracted. And people are generally react with this look. And then they go, oh, okay. And then just play along. It's amazing how much people will play along.
Yeah. We'll get into play along here in just a second. I'm going to move into our next story. Right before I do, I also want to ask you a question about being a BIPOC person and being in a state of depression or a state of mania or a state of bipolarness. Do you think the stigma is higher? Do you think that that when we have episodes or when we have things happen against us, it's less treated? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I am white enough to pass, so it's not usually a problem.
Yeah. I am. The reason I brought this up is because a couple of the folks who couldn't make it today really asked me to talk about being a person of color, which both Corey and I are. And as you said, I am white enough to pass most of the time. I'll get a very oh, that's a very exotic last name, or you're very, very exotic looking for a white person. And I'll go, I get that quite a bit. But we are going to go in the years that we met, just so it's easier for me. So Ms. Dominique Paul St. James, you are next. Our crowned lady over there, or crowned gentleman in sashed lady.
Yeah, not in face today, sorry.
So talk to me about your story and why talking about mental health is important to you. And I also I will circle back about being a person of color in the world of mental health.
So for me, I've always had anxiety and bouts of depression. And I didn't really know what it was until I was actually doing a contract on a ship, and it got really, really bad. And just working on a ship is very isolating as it is. Um, and being a performer, you also aren't that busy. You do your shows, you have a little bit of cruise ship work, but there's a lot of downtime by yourself. And I finally was like, something's seriously wrong because this is not normal for me to just be fine and then 10 minutes later, hysterically crying. It was like, so I went to someone in Aruba because that's the only place I could go on the cruise ship. And that's when I was diagnosed with anxiety. And it made so much sense. I was like, finally, I have a name for this. And, it's not just a thing. People with mental health are very dismissive. They're like, oh, you just worry too much. Or, oh, just put a smile on your face, and they don't understand. And, you're very aware that my father passed last year. Actually, last week was the anniversary of his death. And that was, I didn't realize how bad it would come up. My mother, a month after my dad died, she had to be rushed for emergency surgery. So I am that kind of person that I keep going and going and going and going. And I think anybody with mental health, any kind of mental illness, sometimes you keep doing something to just survive, and I didn't realize how bad I was going until I was on my way to my step down from Miss Maryland driving and had a serious panic attack and thought I was having a heart attack. And I got to the ER and I was fine. And then I've never had a panic attack like that before. I could not talk. My hands had clenched up. My legs had clenched up. I was in the wheelchair. They had to give me 2 Ativans. And I think for me, what I'm now working on is being able to acknowledge, like, okay, I am depressed. Let's acknowledge it and let's confront it. For the longest time, I didn't do that. And it's very ironic because my mother was in the mental health field. She was a social worker. So, you would have thought that she could have seen something, but um, I still battle with the depression, and I think part of that is really grief as well, and also being in the performance world, which you can attest to, Corey. You can attest to this. It's a lot of pressure, and I had an eating disorder, and I just think people of color, which it seems to be getting better. I think more African American people are acknowledging that therapy is a good thing, but coming up, it was looked down upon, or it was joked about, like, oh, here comes that one crazy aunt or that one crazy uncle, instead of acknowledging that this is something serious that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, one of the things that I think about a lot is the fact that I had been, and I speak about this quite a bit in my therapy, that I've been taught to kind of push things. You're taught so much to just like push it down, and then you push it down and push it down and push it down, and then you end up somebody who just kind of, well, for me, I end up somebody who shuts down, and I can't talk about the problem anymore. I don't know how to talk about the problem anymore. I shut people out all the time, and I think because of that, I feel I almost feel like the imposter syndrome, even on stage. I'm like, am I as good as them? Is my performances? Do they like my performance? Do I have to be funnier right now? Do I have to be this in front of people? And Corey, you can probably attest to this. I've always been an outgoing person, but in the back of my mind, I am always like, do they want me here? Like that's a constant struggle that goes on in my mind. And I mean, I was very lucky to have friends like Corey in high school who we could just be weird together, and just do crazy things with our little group of friends that were also crazy. and I use that in like the fun term, not necessarily like calling us crazy, but
Right.
I think it's accurate on both times.
I do call myself crazy quite often. I tell my husband all the time, who is a physician, I'm going to take my crazy pills now. Let me let me do my thing. But it's a sense of release for me, you know, like, or relief, I should say, to like jest about it. Sometimes you have to. It's your life. But I do want to go back to being a person of color and having access and having not just having access, but having the freedom to talk about this. Have you ever experienced that or felt like you weren't able to because of the color of your skin or the way you were brought up? You kind of hinted at that, but I would really love to dig into that a little bit
I was because I was brought up that you don't share that kind of stuff. You deal with it on your own. And I was brought up with the thing of don't do anything to embarrass me. So in that mindset, I remember when I called my mom and I was hysterically crying, I'm like, now I'm one of your clients. And interesting enough, she was like, no, you're doing what you need to do. But in the back of my head, hearing so much growing up, you know, being a Black man, and I wasn't out of the closet, the thing of Black men don't need therapy, and those kind of things, it does kind of mold the way that you handle the mental illness. And for me, like you said, I just kept pushing things down. And I'm one who will completely shut down. And I'll just keep working and keep working. And people are like, he is so aloof, or like something's wrong with him. It's a coping mechanism because I feel like if I don't, I am going to break down to a point that I'm not even comfortable with.
Yeah. And I'm also, and I will for me and not for anybody else. So if y'all agree, go ahead and nod your heads or speak up or do whatever. But I'm one of those people that if I don't keep the busiest that I am or that I can, I'm gone. Like I won't be calling, I won't be texting, I will not be a part of the group, I will not be, so I am like, I will be busy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even if I am not sleeping. And yeah, Corey, you had.
Yeah, with the bipolar disorder, routine is extremely important. So I work every day on any number of various projects, but I discovered recently that it gives other people an inferiority complex that I didn't mean to instill. So I work through weekends. I work because it's that like coming into this room and sitting down at my computer and doing some work relieves the anxiety. And other people were like, "Oh, the weekend, do I need to?" And I was like, "You don't need to do anything. Like, I will leave you messages, and you don't need to respond to them until Monday. But I have to be here."
Yeah, I a lot of people that I'm intimidated because of all of the things and the way that and a lot of us have these disorders, these things going on with us. We perfect at it. The way that I clean, the way that I handle my track, I have to perfectly. The way that I do it just has to be done a certain way. So I'm off. I feel very off. So I hear I think we can move into our next a little back on but I think we can move into our story.
Yeah, Aaliyah, we're dealing with that microphone problem. Give us a second, but yeah, keep going.
Got it. Treasure, I met you next in my life, my dear. You have. Go ahead.
So, my name's Treasure Rose. I am Miss Bay, Nebraska, and I am diagnosed with depression. I did not find out about this until just a couple of years ago. From the time I was 21 up until I was 33, I would self-medicate with drugs and alcohol. And now I'm on the path to sobriety. I'm 2 years sober from alcohol. I'm 11 years clean from methamphetamine. And at the beginning, being a performer, because I've only been performing for 5 years, and the first 3 years for me, it was just like Dominique said, a lot of pressure that you put on yourself. You know, is my outfit good enough? Is my performance good enough? And then my anxiety would raise, and I would continue to do shots to try to self-medicate. So drag actually became very destructive for me. And now, looking back for the past 2 years, drag is my therapy. Performing is my therapy, because that's how I can, in a healthy manner, cope and deal with my day-to-day issues and my depression, and not go back down that dark hole of let's self-medicate, let's get destructive. Because much like you, Aaliyah, when I get in my depressive state, I start to shut down and I close everybody else off. And even just this last year, there were 2 times this last year where I was unemployed, and I started to feel myself going down that dark hole. And thankfully, performing is about the only thing that kept me from diving headfirst into my pillow fort and just shutting the world out.
So we have. Can you hear me?
A little bit.
Dominic,
Yes, it's you. We're gonna need to boot you out of the studio and bring you back.
let's do it.
Alrighty. Everyone, we're gonna take a commercial real quick to fix this. We'll be back in 30 seconds.
Viva Aaliyah is proudly sponsored by Fierce Drag Jewels. For all of your sparkly needs, check out their Facebook and Instagram, or check them out on their website, www.fiercedragjewels.com. Viva Aaliyah is proudly sponsored by Big Girl Nails by Coco. Claw your way to the top with the nails for the stars.
No, I can't hear ya.
I can hear you.
Aaliyah, talk to me.
Now you
Aaliyah, talk to me.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. But it's so gargled. Sorry, folks. Alrighty, guys. Just a second more.
I feel like this is sounding way appropriate for the mental health show.
Alrighty, hold tight for us, everybody. We're almost there. I see you, Aaliyah. I'll just give you a minute to get that situated.
Right. There we go. Wait, am I still fuzzy? Oh, there we go. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay. No, I'll all right. So thank you. Thank you for telling me. What I want to ask is, being a performer, there's a lot of pressure that comes along with it to be intoxicated or take drugs. How do you deal with that?
Honestly, I'm very, very thankful that in my community, in this entire state, I have a very strong support network within the drag community. If I ever feel myself start to slip on that slope of, maybe I could just have one beer or one shot, they're actually there to pull me back and say, no, let's not bring drunk Treasure out. You don't need this in your life. You're doing so well. So I'm very, very thankful. And honestly, it does get to the point sometimes, especially after the show, where everybody's kikiing at the bar, having a good time, where sometimes I do have to remove myself from that situation. I'll tell Sterling, my husband, hey, I'm going to go out to the car. I'll meet you out there. Take your time. Do whatever you need. I just need to decompress and get away from this. Even outside of drag, sometimes being in a bar setting with friends, if it's a casual, kind of low-key night, I'm fine. But once the bar starts getting packed and the party atmosphere really starts ramping up, that's when I'm like, okay, I need to remove myself.
Yeah, like a lot of what we go through. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm still messed up. Is it? Hold on. Stop. Okay.
All right. I said also O'Doul's help, like NA beer and orange juice and Sprite have gotten me through a lot of tough nights.
I'm so sorry. I'm not really. But we are gonna keep on.
Treasure, I just wanted to say, strength and courage. Yeah. I really respect you.
Alrighty, folks. Dominic here again. I'm gonna try one last thing. Everybody just count to 20. Still for me, real quick. Some strange things about that. Give me just a moment. Everybody can still hear me? Nod for me. Awesome. All right, give me just a second here. Aaliyah, can you just say something for me real quick?
Yes.
Okay, lovely. The lovely Dominique. Dominique, would you mind just saying something for me real quick?
Yep. Hello.
Hello, wonderful. And the wonderful Miss Corey.
Hello.
Awesome. Okay, and let's bring back Treasure. Okay, give me just a second here. Bye, Treasure. Let's bring back Alejandro. Wonderful. Alrighty. So, Treasure, let's go ahead and have you exit the studio and re-enter, and we'll see if that knocks it out. All right.
Okay. Alejandro, hi, babe.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
Sorry
How
for
are
all the
you?
difficulties, and we thankfully have not lost viewers during this, so thank you for sticking with us, viewers. I am very grateful for everybody that's on tonight, and I just want to say, like, we've met in the last few years. You are an entertainer. You have competed at Gay United States as well, and I met you, I believe, in Virginia, right?
Washington, D.C. It was at Capital City.
Capital
You
City.
sang Glitter in the Air.
Oh,
Yeah, you sang
okay.
Glitter in the Air, and it was amazing. And I just remember, because I love that song, and I really identified with Pink's performance at the VMAs when she did it. And so I just really fell in love with that song. And so that was like my really defining moment. It was the night that Bianca won Capital City. Yeah, so it was like 2019. Yeah, so like 3 years ago, almost.
Wow. Once. There we go. All right. So, if you don't mind telling your story and then talking about why talking about mental health is important to you, and then Treasure, we're going to come back and finish our discussion.
Yeah, of course. So growing up, I kind of always knew that like something was like off. Like I would be sad sometimes for like what felt like months at a time, like even as a child. And I could remember like always wanting to see someone about it. And being raised in like a pretty traditional Mexican family was like rough. But my dad was also an officer in the Marine Corps, and I was the only boy. And at that time, it was like detrimental to his career for him to seek mental health help. And so he learned to cope with that through alcoholism. And we were told that we didn't talk about it. It was very much about what my dad looked like within the Marine Corps. And, you know, every time we would go to any events that were on base functions, my dad would always get us fresh haircuts, and my mom would be in charge of making sure that we had matching outfits as a family. And we were told, yeah, you don't talk about your problems, like rub some dirt in it and keep it moving. And you know, I grew up dancing. I started dancing when I was 5 and doing theater and singing. I went to school at Christopher Newport University here in Virginia for vocal performance with focus in classical voice and opera studies. And very much I had just kind of made myself very, very busy. And I was in the middle of my sophomore year, and I went to a house party. And the next thing I remember, I woke up in my dorm room at school, and I came to the realization that I had been drugged and raped. And my world shut down, and I stopped going to class. It made me anxiety ridden to even be on campus. I didn't withdraw from the school for the longest time. I just didn't go to class. And a lot of people recognized that something was wrong. But I didn't tell them. I just left and I came home. I moved back to Fredericksburg, Virginia, where I'm from, which is about 2 hours away from where I went to school. And I lived with my parents. I made myself very busy. I got super involved with choreographing for color guards, with teaching color guard, with doing color guard. And one day I was at a rehearsal and I was about to leave, and I looked at one of my really good friends and I just told her, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, if I get in my vehicle, like, I'm not going to make it home. And she called my parents and they like came and got me. And I went to the emergency room at first and waited until there was a bed open in a facility near me. And I was in an inpatient unit for about 2.5, almost 3 weeks. And then for about a month, I did an outpatient unit every day from Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And through that, I was diagnosed with bipolar 2. And I kind of, like I said, I recognized and knew that something was wrong. And through that diagnosis, I also, you know, found out that 2 of my sisters have been diagnosed as well, and my mother is as well. And again, but because the family I was raised in, we weren't ever told to talk about it. So we didn't talk to our siblings even. And it was really, really bad. I was very detrimental to myself at that point in time, that I was like, I need to go to the hospital. I started using drugs heavily. I stole thousands of dollars from my parents because I was so strung out on drugs. And I was very depressed, and nobody knew. Everybody thought I was dealing with everything perfectly, and they thought I just left school because I decided I wanted to do something else, and I had everyone convinced that I was totally fine. And yeah, my world felt like it was over. And so once I got help, I realized that there were so many different healthy coping mechanisms that you could put into place to ensure being a healthier person, and at least being able to recognize when something's not right.
You know,
I would
isn't it
say,
really
oh, go ahead.
isn't it really interesting that we probably all can relate to this, that we are good at hiding, like our whole worlds could be falling apart, and we are so good at hiding and looking as if we're put together. You know, that's just very ironic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the worst of my
Yeah.
times, like people are like, you're so put together and you're so organized, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm crying myself to sleep and have, you know, having severe anxiety, and they would never know.
Yeah.
I would say it's that dog in the middle of the room where the room is on fire, and you're that everything's fine. That is literally how I feel quite often. You, Alejandro, you talked about coping mechanisms, and I'm gonna ask you about some positive coping mechanisms that you found, and then kind of go back through our group and talk about things that we found that are healthy for us, that are coping mechanisms. We all fall into the unhealthy. I'm an emotional eater. I definitely shop when I'm feeling down. I love to swipe a credit card. Those are not great things.
That's why you got all that jewelry.
Honey, that's the word. I know I'm wearing my daintiest jewelry too, and but we all fall into those bad habits. So Alejandro, what are some good coping mechanisms that you found for you?
I think the biggest one, the most healthy one for me at least, and I would say is really good to put in place for everyone, is telling the people who are your support system that they are your support system. Because sometimes I think we can call somebody or text somebody and just be like, hey, let's grab a coffee. And that coffee isn't really just a coffee. It's just so you can be around somebody else. And maybe you don't want to have to tell them what you're going through, or you don't want to talk about your mental health. You just want a day to just be around someone. And I think that if you don't let them know that, then that cup of coffee might be only a cup of coffee for them. And so if you're able to put those people in place, and it doesn't have to be a bunch of people, but people who understand what you're going through, and you let them know, hey, might need you sometime. If I just tell you, hey, this is my code word, let's grab a cup of coffee, just know that I just need to be around someone. I don't want to talk about what I'm going through, but that's what I need. That's been very, very healthy for me. And I think as well, even healthier has been journaling, whether that be like video journaling or writing. For me, at least, to look back on something that I was experiencing, especially if I'm going through a tough time, I can look back and be like, okay, like I might be experiencing something crappy now, but like I'm not necessarily going through this or that. But I can also see growth within myself and within how I handle my mental health in regards to other people and how I interact with them.
Anything? Actually, can you read the drink that is sitting with water? Okay, you first use.
Uh-oh.
You're breaking up, honey.
Aaliyah.
I always wanted to get into the journaling. I have not been consistent with that.
It's hard. I mean, I first tried to do writing and journaling through writing, but it actually was video journaling that's been really helpful for me, because it's just something that's super simple. Even if it's a 30-second clip, you can get on Snapchat and like, I'm having this day and this day and this day, and like it's not the best, but you know what? I'm gonna be fine. And then you say that, and like you don't necessarily have to post it anywhere, but you go back and it's something you see, at a later day, and you're like, well,
Oh wow.
I'm gonna get through this. Yeah.
See, I don't use Snapchat. I'm just now starting to use Instagram. She old, honey. We got Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and Snapchat and this. I can't keep up with you young people.
I don't know.
But-
That's the sad thing is if I weren't an entertainer and I weren't doing drag, I probably wouldn't have. Social media is so stressful, and like 24-hour news is like so unhealthy that like I just I don't know. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna take a break from drag for 3 months so I can get off Instagram and Facebook, and then I'm gonna come back refreshed and ready to go. But yeah, I mean, social media is very unhealthy. So I get it though. Don't be worried that you don't use all the apps, because sometimes I'm sad that I got sucked in it.
Yeah, and and you know how it is, and Treasure, this is that, oh, you got to get that brand out there and stuff. And the funny thing is I'm like, let me just do my shows or whatever, or what I'm gonna do. It produces more anxiety for me. Like, okay, I got to make a post here. I got to do this. And I'm just like, no, this is, for me, drag is a form to get away from the stress and stuff. I mean, it's always going to be stressful if you run in a pageant, or something like that. Ooh, that's a pretty picture.
Ooh, come on, woman. Yeah, no, pageantry is very stressful, and I think drag is stressful in general, and I think that's why I've never understood like why the LGBT community is so divided at times within the drag community itself. And people are like, oh, I don't like this girl and I don't like that girl, and I'm like, look, if she's not taking your coin, then why are you pressed? I mean, there's people that do drag that their style of drag is maybe not my style of drag or my aesthetic, but come on, woman.
Go ahead,
but like
that's who I was dressing next to.
Yeah, we got dressed right next to each other. But yeah, no, I mean, I think things are so different, and
All right,
people are different, and people have different ways of expressing. So you just gotta live your own life.
Speaking of anxiety and all of the things that come along with it,
Dominic, what do you do?
Such a great. My computer is hating me tonight. So
what kind of things do you do that are positive choices?
Well, I will admit that I do struggle because I fall into the line, which I've always been a workaholic. And so I have to find, and it's a struggle for me, I have to find the balance of when I'm working because it makes me feel good and when I'm working to get away from stuff. And that's a very hard balance. I actually, and I'm really bad at it, but I have become a Buddhist. And when I was chanting, it made a huge difference. Like, it actually calmed me, and I could go, okay, I don't want to sound like Tina Turner out of What's Love Got to Do with It, but I was able to like clear my head and look at things and go, okay, this is what I need to do. This isn't as bad as what you think it is. And now let's confront it, I think, I won't say I think, I know I'm still struggling because of the death of my father. I think that for me, I tend to be the one who everybody comes to. So it is very hard for me to rely on people or, use their ear and their shoulder to cry on. Even my husband says that. He's like, you don't let anybody like in. And for me, it's a thing of fear of, if I let someone in, what is going to come out? Because I know that I have worked so much that if I let all of that out, I'm scared I'm just going to be this blob of emotion, So I'm still struggling. You know, when my dad died right after I did 2 pageants, like that was absolutely ridiculous. Actually, excuse me, 3. Yeah, and that was just really ridiculous. So I enjoyed it, but it was only putting what I needed to deal with off. And so I think now, because it put me in the hospital, I'm starting to deal with it. We've got 2 great dogs here. I do believe in pet therapy. They are cute. They're little shits at times. We have a husky and a golden retriever puppy. If I had a hair, I'd pull it out.
If you guys hear cat screaming, it's not animal torture. She's trying to get into the room, not out of it.
Building the anxiety for you, right? Yeah, but what do you, I mean, Corey, do you struggle with that? Because it sounds like you like to work as well.
Yeah, so there's the dividing line between work as routine that is comfortable and then work that is overwhelming. And like, I usually know that I have a problem when it's 6:30 and I'm like, but I can't stop yet. I need to keep going. That's the like, maybe we've switched into different territory now. I have a very strict bedtime that I am cheating on for all of you. Fastest way to kick off an episode in bipolar disorder is to screw up your sleep or not get any. So my biggest self-care is being a very boring, unsocial person. So I don't attend things. People make me very tired. I love them, but they make me so tired. And I go to bed at like 9 o'clock every night and I sleep for 9.5 hours. Which shortens my day immensely. But if I don't do it, then I can't work at all because I'm crazy. So.
Treasure, what do you do?
So right now I'm a trainer at a licensed Starbucks here in town, but work is kind of a double-edged sword for me because I've always put my own personal value into my job. And there are times when it's a great escape and kind of release from everything. So it's great, healthy coping mechanisms. But then more times than not, I bury myself into work or I get way too devoted to the job that I start to cut out personal relationships. I start to even ignore my drag for my job. So I have to kind of have that perfect balance. Otherwise, it just really gets out of control.
Yeah. And that's probably a hard thing to do because your daytime job pays for a lot of the drag. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it does. Unfortunately, in Nebraska, you're not able to do drag full time and pay the bills. It's just not possible at this time. Hopefully, a few years down the road, it will be, but you have to have a day job in order to pay for everything.
Right. And
I think that's a. Can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, thank God. We've tried a computer and 2 phones now, and the second phone finally worked. Speaking of anxiety, that was like top level right there for me. So I guess a good episode to talk about it on. But first of all, thank you all for continuing on while that was all going on. But yeah, I think Treasure, you were just saying drag is you can't support yourself on it. That has actually had a pretty big effect on me. I mean, I took myself out of drag full time because there's a lot of mental tolls that can come with that as well. There's the way you have to look, there's the money you have to spend, and I think it's the same with performance in general. Like, you have to keep up on everything. Voice lessons cost money, Corey, when we were going through all that.
And your pianist. That's
Yes, you're
Oh,
you're
man.
comfy as
you
and
could find one,
and
good luck.
everything that comes along with it. It's a lot to deal with, and those things definitely took a toll on me. And when you're 18, 19, 20, that's a different thing than when you're 30. How old am I now? 5. And
Oh, bless.
I forget all the time how old I am. When you're 35 and trying to like make a living out of something. But it's also like, am I not making a living out of it, or do they just not want me? It can definitely come into that headspace too. So, first of all, I want to say thank you to each of you. Corey, thank you for staying up past your bedtime. I'm very grateful for it. I definitely want to keep this conversation going. We are rounding out the hour mark, which is where we like to cut off the episode, but I think we can definitely do this again and maybe bring in some other folks who have other stories, and get some more interaction from the audience. And also, we're updating our tech here in the studio, so hopefully that will not be an issue. But I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for being a part of this. You were all
It was a pleasure.
near and dear to me, and
Yes, thank you. For joining us.
and like always catching up. Corey, after 10 years, we caught up now, so we're just gonna have to continue to do this. Maybe not talk about mental health, but catch up. We can do both, but not in this capacity. I love you all. So if you want to hang out backstage, I'm just going to close out the show and then we can go from there. But I will see you here backstage in just a second. Thank you all. You're wonderful.
Bye.
Bye.
Viva, it's never a dull moment. I'm on my husband's camera phone. I feel like I'm looking sideways at you. Again, never a dull moment in the studio. We're updating, I promise. But my makeup does look good from this angle, so I'm not unhappy about that. Next week, we have Miss Gay America, the newly crowned 50th anniversary Miss Gay America, Dextacy, on the show. She is very excited. She's emailed me 3 times asking when I was going to get her the information because she's so excited. We are rounding out the end of our season. I think 6 episodes left until we are done with season 4. Then we are going to take a break and then come back with a bang for season 5. I'm not sure how we're going to top what we did for season 4 kickoff, but we will try. I love you all. Take care of each other. Make sure you are treating each other with kindness and love, and realize that not everybody is in the same place as you. We are all in different places in our life, physically and mentally. And this pandemic has taken a toll on us, y'all. So just love, 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 love. And if you can't love, and if you got nothing nice to say, Mama said it best, don't say it at all. I love you. Viva Aaliyah.
Viva Aaliyah. Viva Aaliyah.